Europoors. Now, this is a phrase that has been described, used to describe Europeans by the American perspective, because Europeans have always, well, not always, but ever since the war, been a bit poorer than the Americans. It's always been a bit poorer. It's never been that extreme. But recently, a huge debate has been sparked by this tweet. And this is a Chipotle ad for hiring at Chipotle. If you'd like to go and work at Chipotle, not sponsored, sadly. But this is a guy here saying you can make 100K at Chipotle in under 3 years, which got a lot of likes and conversation starting. If you don't know what he's talking about, it says it there in the text. Career path to $100,000 total compensation around 3 years. So the idea that you can get 100K in 3 years, it's not entirely clear.
Right.
If that means over the 3 years or at the end of 3 years, you'll be making that per year. But I mean, corpos, like they're going to lie to you.
Well,
if the truth.
If it was 33 grand a year dollars, that wouldn't be that much actually.
Well, it would depend on what comes with that. Because also they say here, for example, debt-free college degrees, medical benefits, flexible schedule, 401k, blah, blah, blah. Which, if you're paying for the tuition, good God, that could be a lot of money. So Europeans took this news well, as you can see. Please put a content warning. There is Europeans using this app from local trans flag, gay flag, EU flag. Okay. Alrighty. Just so happens to be whenever we find these people. So then there's the French. Now, I don't read French. Don't need to hit translate post on that. I already know. He's miffed. He's a bit miffed because he's looking at Buc-ee's here, which is a gas station in the United States, a rather big one, to be fair. And as you can see here, here's the wages paid weekly. $18 is the lowest. Then it goes all the way up to a general manager who can make up to $225,000 a year, which
But even an assistant manager is like 100K.
Yep. Food service manager 175, car wash manager 125, and then assistant manager 100K. Department manager gets $33 an hour.
So this is definitely a thing. I've been collecting charts on this for Future Brokenomics at some point, but you can basically see the lines diverge around 2008 between the Euro area and the US and the rest of the world. And the US is basically, the rest of the world is on top. Then it's like America, and then a long way behind is the Europoors.
Yeah, and it seems to be something that people have noticed. But to be fair, corpos, as I mentioned, are full of shit and will lie to you and bend the truth and everything else. I mean, these are adverts for why you should come and work for us. And my brain obviously notices that these people will lie to you and wants to find out what the truth is there, because I find it a bit suspicious, the idea you'd be earning 100K per year at Chipotle. So I looked it up. So here's Chipotle, here's their website, here's careers. And apparently that advert there was in San Francisco. So we're going to be looking at San Francisco, which of course is a bit difficult because the United States being so big, and the way wealth works everywhere is that wealth is concentrated in its creation in where it's created, and then hopefully trickles around investments to the rest of the country, right? So they have a similar problem to us, where you've got like a few areas in the United States that are burgeoning with wealth and where prices are really high as a result. But we've got a similar thing. We've got London. It's not the same, but that's going to be my point of comparison for this.
I was going to say that because America's so big. When you talk about just in general, America's richer than Europe. I mean, famously, there's parts of like the Appalachians, which are extremely poor.
Yeah.
And then, certain segments of some of the big cities are some of the most affluent places in the world. Same for Britain, right? If you live in London and got a decent job in London, you are going to be richer than if you have a crappy job in a rural area of
you say you're going to be
Midlands
richer
or the north or something.
You say you'd be richer, but basically the landlords capture
or at least
all the excess.
earning more. Let's say
you earn more, but you pay so much more on rent that you actually come out about the same as somebody who just got a crappy job in like Wales or something.
And also the downside of working for Chipotle in San Francisco is that you
have to live in San
You
Francisco.
have to be in shit town.
To be fair, living in London also not great. So that's why I'm going to make a point of comparison. It's not perfect, but what can you do? That's the two nations we're in. So here we are. Here's a crew member position. So you work at the very bottom of the rung. You're making the food and then serving the food. Well, that pay starts at $38,000. And the benefits include $5,250 a year for tuition, and then medical. You also get dental, and you also get vision insurance. So that's the best benefits. They also mention some other crap, but it's not really that interesting. That's really the interesting subjects. So are you getting paid 100K as a crew member in San Francisco? No, absolutely not. Of course not. But you are getting 38K, which I suppose over 3 years is more than 100, if that's what it was advertising. Which no, it's not. So once I learned that, I thought, okay, well, corpo advertising, full of shit. Maybe it's not so bad. And then I started looking a bit deeper. So let's go to the managers at Chipotle. So here's Glassdoor reporting on managers at Chipotle's in San Francisco. total pay between 69,000 to 103,000 a year, with the median, so the most common there in the middle, 84,000. So a manager is getting 84,000 US dollars at a Chipotle, which I imagine for some of the American audience are going to be like, big whoop. For us, this is not normal. This is very abnormal. In case you're wondering how abnormal, we have Chipotle in the UK. There's not many, but there's some. And here you are. Here's a general manager at a Chipotle restaurant in London, £30,000, which equates to 38,000 US dollars. So in the US, 84 grand. In the UK, 38 grand.
So basically, you get pretty much the same salary as like a shop floor worker for being the manager over here.
A shop floor worker in the United States,
yeah,
is a manager of Chipotle in the United Kingdom, and
yes.
That's in London again. Which just
yes,
right. There might actually be a problem.
Yeah, $84,000 is not bad, right? It's just not. That's not a bad wage.
Which again, there might be some people thinking, or at least Americans pointing out to us, as like, whoa, hold on, San Francisco, of course.
Yeah.
Keep in mind. I mean, not only have we got to deal with the human shit. There's wages are higher in the United States because the costs are higher. It's not a perfect comparison. Okay, fair. But we'll get back to that. Because I did then look up, where's that 100K figure come from? So if a manager's getting 84K, how would it be accurate in the advertising you could get 100K at Chipotle within 3 years? Well, it turns out it's possible. So this is them saying here, Chipotle have just rolled out new accelerated job paths for six-figure incomes. And this was in 2021. So, of course, that's going to have changed significantly. And they're talking here that if you become a restaurateur, so if you own the restaurant and manage it, your salary from Chipotle would be 100,000 US dollars or above, which after another 3 years of inflation, since that was published, I imagine is going to be even higher because the dollar is worth less. And then I decided to look up San Francisco income brackets, because that's where there is some truth, of course, in the fact that it's not that amazing. Because if you see here, if you're the average in San Francisco, you're earning 104,000 US dollars a year. That's the median. That's the middle. If you're earning less than that, you're less than the average. If you're earning more than that, you're more than. I just can't get over the idea that more than 50% of people in San Francisco are earning more than 100K. Half the population on more than 100K.
And how can the 10th percentile be 45 grand when they've got all of those homeless people? Or were they just excluded from the numbers?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
They must be excluded from the numbers, yeah. If you're not employed, then they don't count you. I would have thought. I don't know.
Like a substantial amount of people in
How do you census them, I suppose? Hello, Mr. Druggy Homeless. Would you like to fill in this graph?
Yeah. But, I mean, they stop to poo in the streets quite regularly, so you've got plenty of opportunities to survey them.
Yeah. But I don't think they've been included in this one. I think it's just working.
Yeah, possibly.
I've never really understood how homeless people afford their drug habits, other than just stealing.
Yeah. I think it is the stealing.
It's just that, is it? I don't know. How can you be jobless and homeless and still get loads of fentanyl or whatever it is they're on?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's cheap.
Okay.
It must be cheap.
I suppose it must be.
Although I have a whole sidetrack. I have seen one country on Earth fix homelessness, and this is the solution to homelessness. It's the big secret they've been hiding from you.
Right.
Don't give them money.
Yeah.
Literally fixes it. And I've seen this, I've mentioned this before. Go to Serbia, okay, and then cross the border into Kosovo. Don't argue about it. And that's the Albanian part, right? And you'll notice that there are no homeless people in like Craiova, and then you cross into Kosovo with the Albanians, and there's just homeless everywhere, constantly begging for money. Just different cultures. One gives money, and the other one is just like...
Well, and also San Francisco is a good case study on this, because they've got a program to eliminate homelessness that they pump millions into, and the amount of money they've been pumping into this program has been going up steadily over the years. And if you overlay the chart of the money they've been putting into the homeless program over the chart of the amount of homeless, they're the same line.
Right.
They match. So basically, they are funding a program for people whose job it is to administer these people, and therefore they need more of them.
But getting back to San Francisco, because as mentioned, I mean, I just find it mind-boggling that more than half the population of San Francisco are on 100K or more, which, again, I mean, the United States is just a huge place. Wealth works in a certain way, which is that there are hubs of wealth creation. And then the hope is that those people generate that wealth and then decide they want to keep some of it by investing it in other places in the country. And but it seems to be working in the US somewhat, but in the UK, it's a different matter. I mean, all of our wealth is just put in London. And then if you're sensible, you invest in global markets, not locally, because why would you?
Yeah, I mean, I know you've made the point, and I'm agreeing with you. If you looked at the same chart for sort of, I don't know, Gary, Indiana, or like a small satellite town of Omaha, Nebraska, or something, it'd be nothing like
Yeah, funnily enough.
104 grand median.
But that's why I'm comparing it to London. Like, if you work in central London, or you're working as a Chipotle manager in London, for example, you're on the crew wage for San Francisco, which is just amazing. I mean, we can see here the other highest paid jobs. So, I mean, this is more just, the jealousy graph, where you look at the people who are making ridiculous amounts of money, which that's a thing. So you can go through all that in your own time. I don't know how to do it properly because I'm a moron. But anyway, back to London, though, because the comparison between these two, I don't think is actually that insane. Because we'll go real quick to In-N-Out, who also apparently pay 160 on average for their store managers, which a lot of Europeans took that well. So that's it. But getting back to San Francisco, someone made this post. Transport police starting salaries. London, $37,000 US. San Francisco starting $124,000 US, up to 200 grand. That's what they're adding here.
To be fair, though, if you're an American cop, it's more likely that you're going to have to attend somebody who's dying of a fentanyl overdose and then spend your entire life in jail because of it.
They are different roles.
Yeah.
For sure. But the idea that it's that different that we're looking at, what is that, 3, 4, maybe even 6 times your wage? Good God.
Yeah.
That is a different world. That's just not like, I have to carry a gun, I have to deal with this, that. That's a completely different society. When we talk about Eastern European nations, in fact, I remember this graph we looked at where it was the wealth of the UK. There are some regions of the UK that when you account for the cost of living are as wealthy as regions of Poland, like rural regions of Poland.
Poor, in other words.
Yeah. I really do think the difference between the Europeans and the United States at this point, I suppose we should say North America, is starting to look like that. It's starting to look like the Europeans who lived in Poland looking at us when the wall fell and how the money has just, gone somewhere and not somewhere else, or been created. Because we go to San Francisco again, as I mentioned, the comparisons are not completely unjust. So this is someone pointing out that here's the number of dwellings approved per 1,000 people, and it's got some American cities and London. London being terrible for this, just not built houses. You can also see San Francisco there. It's also, built about the same number of houses. But when you compare the rental changes, the house price changes, London is ridiculous. It's just mad.
I mean, it almost looks like there's some sort of relationship between supply and demand.
Yeah. But compound that with the wages and the fact that the wages haven't increased in London the same way they've increased in San Francisco over that time period from 2000. I mean, never mind 2008. Let's not even talk about the dark times. Your rent would have skyrocketed and your wage would have not really gone very far if you're a Chipotle manager in London. But if you were one in San Francisco, you're now on an average of 84K and the rental price is lower. So you've got other costs, don't get me wrong, but these two things I don't think are that different. There's also, people have been pointing out, back to that Buc-ee's situation, a Buc-ee's manager gets paid more than the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. This is that graph from a while back.
And to be fair again, he's probably a better leader.
Yeah.
So he probably deserves more.
He will actually make the place run instead of destroying it. Maybe that is the job, though.
We can objectively say that every single Buc-ee's manager, every single one of them, without exception, is a better leader of men than Rishi Sunak. Yeah.
Least competent Buc-ee's manager, most competent PM. So, there's that. But this is a story that's not been unnoticed as well. I mean, people have been pointing out this. So here's an article talking about the mass emigration of young Britons. So this gets back to, I remember Thomas went to Australia recently and then came back. I keep mentioning the story, it stuck with me. That he said, this is where all the young people went. Because you walk around Swindon and there's no young English people. They're just not there. There's young people from pretty much every other part of the world. Yeah. No young English people with kids. It's just not a common feature. Whereas when Thomas went to Australia, he was like, they're all here. And they're all English. They're not Australian, they're English. And it's like, what's this situation? And it's because people are leaving. So this is an article talking about that, the mass immigration to Australia, New Zealand, Canada. And this guy writes, I think correctly, the element of the UK discussions on emigration, particularly to Australia, I find the most interesting is they often mentioned motivation of quote-unquote lifestyle. It's rarer to hear the quiet part, which is they're noticeably richer than us now.
Well, that's how they're able to get the immigration so high, isn't it? Because they import 1.4 million. but they say, oh no, it's only 700,000 because another 700,000 people, British people, gave up and left. And it's like, well, and that's supposed to be a justification as to why the hell are 700,000 people, British people, quitting this place.
I mean, it's not really a. I mean, I suppose if you're thinking it from a global perspective, because you're a globalist, I suppose it is a strategy for them. You just move the Anglos to the richer nations over time, but then the homelands become completely hollowed out, and then you fill in that hollow shell with Pakistan, and then suddenly enough, you haven't actually got England anymore. You've got something else.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you were young and you just simply can't afford a deposit for a mortgage on a home in the city that you live in, which is also now a Pakistani enclave or something, but you can go to Australia, which is just nicer in terms of weather, and you can afford a house, and it won't be like a Nigerian or a Bangladeshi enclave. Yeah, move there then. Yeah,
it's just on the cards.
Yeah,
I mean, for people before they say it, because I know as well, it's the situation of the prices of things in cities is not unique to London. Of course, Sydney has its own problems with housing and everything else, and they've got the unique tax situation on housing, which is why it's such an investment there. But the point being, if you're British, London is the place where all the money is made. So you think, go there, do your life, whatever. But the money isn't actually that interesting anymore. Like, unless you're working in one of those top positions, it's actually kind of dull. It's not worth it. Instead, you can just go to Australia. And they mention in here that they're blaming TikTok, of all things. So this is them talking about it. TikTok makes this so more legible too. Every day, young Londoners can see online who's making more and where. And they mention here graduate trainee salaries have fallen 22% in real terms since 2010. So if you became a graduate, you did that to make more money. You did the right path. You studied. You did hard school. Blah blah blah. Actually, you're way worse off than those graduates in 2010. So, you know where you could look? Elsewhere. And people have been. I mean, I don't know if we can. I suppose I'll restart this. This is a TikTok talking about this issue. Well, not talking about it, but showing it. And there's loads of these where it's just showing graduate salaries for different professions in the UK versus the US in this one, for example. If you do law, starting salary 25k for the UK, 50k for the US. Again, USD, so it's a bit different, but come on, that's not the same. Medicine, 35, 181. Teaching, 20k in the UK, 60k in the US. Marketing, nursing. Nursing being the big stinging one for those going to Australia, of course. This is not unknown. People are just like, why the hell would I stay? Want to be a nurse in London? Or do you want to go to Australia? Get paid double.
Yeah, I think they get more of the training paid here, but yeah.
One thing I would say that London is, it's not just Chipotle. A lot of jobs in London are around finance, right? Asset servicing, that sort of thing. The financial sector, private financial sector. And of course, there are decent salaries to be found there.
There are some, yeah.
There are, yeah. So it's not just.
But the idea that it's the hub of wealth for people trying to find wealth, it just seems to be gone. Because remember, of course, you then got, as I mentioned, nursing there. There's something obviously you need in London, medicine. And, well, if you're British and you do that, you wouldn't go to London. You'd be foolish to do that. You would leave. And people are. I mean, that's what the old article was about. Just lots of nursing students, for example, going to Australia. It's a well-known issue. But I don't mean to just bring this all out to be like, man, God, look at America, shining city on the horizon. It's not. It's got its problems. It's got a lot of problems. But there is just an undeniable truth that things have changed. Because you see here, this is Financial Times, and this is a graph of economic growth showing the EU, Japan, the US, and then globally. Now, the ones we're going to be focusing on are the EU and US, and that's why I focused on the Europoors. Because you see this going from 1975 till today, and you can see around about 2008, there's a gap. I seem to remember it was always the case, or the feeling, that the US is a bit richer. There's silly money out there for elections or whatever else. But the gap wasn't that mental. And then, of course, since 2008, the EU is there, and the US is just much, much higher. Because there's a slightly higher growth rate, that obviously compounds. And I wonder where this is going to be within 10 years, especially. Just the absolute difference will be mental. Because, you see the future of Japan, and that's pretty stagnant. It used to be richer than the average American, and now they're just, barely holding on above us.
So small incremental changes in the rate make huge difference in outcomes. So if the US had 1% slower growth between its founding and today, its current economy would be smaller than Albania's. So it makes a huge difference. But the other interesting thing about that is, of course, is the global bit. mean, what do they mean by that? Well, that's going to be basically the BRICS, isn't it?
China, India, Indonesia, things
Brazil,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah. Which, are exciting in their own right, but they're not exactly overtaking the US anytime soon, it seems. But if that continues, then maybe they will.
Yeah.
But yeah, there we are. That's just something I wanted to talk about, which there was a huge debate about Chipotle, whether or not they're paying 100K. Sadly not for crew workers as of yet. Maybe if they keep printing the money, they will, but it'll be worthless. But it is true that, yeah, I think the Europeans have got to reckon with the fact that the lack of productivity on this continent is really starting to hurt. It's really starting to be demonstrable as well.
Yes.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content on the site, such as the Epoch series, this episode on Tiberius Gracchus. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.